Welcome back to another video, and today I will be going through my favorite neutral palettes. I saw a couple of YouTubers doing a sort of a collective video of their sort of favorite neutral eyeshadow palettes in this sort of 2024 edit format, and I thought that because I like talking about palettes, then I might actually do one myself, so here we are. So we will be going through quite a sort of a traditional way that I like to do my palette videos. So first I will go through my drugstore options, then I will show the higher end options, and then I will end with the indie palettes. So we will have a nice sort of variation of palettes of different kind of price points and formulations. But let's now get to the palettes themselves. So for the drugstore there are actually like two brands and 3 palettes, but I have like the 2 palettes, two from the 3 palettes I have like bunched into sort of one. So first one that I wanted to show was this one. So this is Kiko Milano's holiday palette from last year. So this was the holiday palette and this is called Dreamy. And I think why I wanted to put this in a neutral palette video as a drugstore option was that yeah, there is like a bit of pop of berry pink here, but this is essentially a very sort of neutral palette. And why I think that this was quite nice is that the shimmer quality here, there was this sort of quite nice, this is like very good neutral palette for those looks that you just want some mattes in your crease and then a nice sort of like layer of shimmer that will like sort of give sparkle to the look. And I did praise this palette, I sort of in my end of the year palette rankings, as something that I do think that especially in terms of shimmer formula the brand has improved quite a lot, and a lot of these shimmers will give you very nice, you can like tap them on your lid for a bit of sparkle or you can build them to quite an opaque layer. And also there are like a couple of directions because there are these sort of more, there's like black here and some cooler tone browns here, so you can actually get a more cooler toned leaning look here with this one, or you can get a more like warm toned leaning look. So there is some like in terms of what kind of neutrals you like, there is some options here. Then 2 palettes that I am sort of grouping. So these are for a drugstore, this is a brand that's available to you, these are I think one of my favorites. So these are the MUA plastic sort of palettes in these sort of very cheap kind of plastic packaging, but these are like I ranked the blush nude one, which is this one. I ranked this as one of my favorite like drugstore formula. So these are very affordable, these are like a bit over €6 in my country, so very inexpensive, but these have like a beautiful formula. The matte formula is this sort of very nice, it is in the more I'd say blendable side, so if you have a medium to deep skin tone then you might have to build the mattes quite a bit, but on a fair and light skin tone, very beautiful, easy to work matte formula, and the shimmers are just very beautiful. This has this sort of very like glossy sparkly shimmers in the sort of blush nude palette, and this is just, it is just I'd say one of the like prettiest and most beautiful formulas that I think drugstore has produced, considering how these are priced. If you're looking for your sort of more, I'd say, traditional neutrals that you don't like your sort of peaches but you really want like brown tones, then I would recommend this one. So this is the soft nudes, and I'd say that compared to the sort of shimmers in the blush nudes, these are more sort of traditional metallic shimmers. So if you want a sort of more sort of this traditional metallic shimmer instead of like sparkles, then I would take the soft nudes one instead. But I'd say that either of these you won't be disappointed, the quality is very good, and if you want, there are like options that, and they have one more like in this series that's more cool toned one, so they actually do have, you have your like rosier peachier nudes, you have your like basic brown neutrals, and they have a cool toned options within this like line of palettes, so another like great drugstore recommendation in terms of neutral palettes. Next, let's go through some high-end palettes, and there is actually like 4, so quite a few. First one is a relatively new one, so this is the Dior Smokey Essentials 9-pan palette, and this is like something that has been released this year. And this is my recommendation if you're looking for something a bit more like muted, sort of reddish leaning that has a like bronze to it. So this is sort of a smoky bronze warm leaning palettes, and if you especially have more mature lids, or if you're someone who likes very easily to work with satin shades, then this is a neutral option that I would recommend. And as with the sort of Silver Essentials palette, that is the other palette that I have in this line, this is one of the few formulas that I can do a smoky eye with, because the sort of black shades here, these are very easy to blend and work with. Then we have a palette that I know was quite popular, I think, in terms of luxury makeup reviews last year, and for a good reason. So this is the Remebrance palette by Byredo, and this is unfortunately not available anymore, and sorry about the reflective packaging. And this is especially if you like, again, your more sort of peachy toned neutrals, then this is a very good option. And this, what I do like about it, it does have a bit of a twist to it, so there is a bit of silver shades, which again you would not expect to work with these sort of more warmer, peachier neutral shades, but it actually, they all work very well. This, again, you aren't gonna get like super impactful shimmers, but especially if you have, again, more textured and mature lids, then you will probably like this quite a lot. However, I do say that, for example, this silver up here, there is quite nice sparkle to it, and even this sort of more like a burnt rosy color here. So there are also some sparklier options, but this is one of those formulas that is like, it's so easy that it almost like blends itself to your crease, and it's very like hassle-free, and you will get a beautiful look every time, no matter what sort of combination you do with this one. Then a classic, again something unfortunately that has been discontinued, though this is the original Sultry palette. There is now the mini version of it, but I don't think the shades like, I like the original one much more. This is getting to be a bit old, however mine isn't as old as you might think, because I got the one that was in the gift set in the re-release a few years ago. This is one of the few purely cool toned palettes that I have. I do think the formula has lasted time quite well. The shimmer in this one, because I do actually have one of the newer, I have the Fall Romance palette that ABH came out with last year, and I do know that now she has amped up the shimmer formula, so this shimmer formula, it's nice, but it is perhaps not as sparkly as some of the current shimmer formulas that are on the market. But nevertheless, still, if you have this, dig it out, and if you especially like your cool toned looks, this is still a very, very good formula. It is more on the powdery side, but again, for those of us who love cool tones, and if you have this one, then please use it, because I still think it's very good, and at least my palette has lasted time quite well. Then lastly, so this is the Natasha, or last of the higher end ones, so this is the Natasha Denona My Dream palette, and this is the neutral palette for all of those who really like your warm tones. I have said again that I have a bit of a complicated relationship with this one, because I do use this quite a lot, but this isn't my favorite Natasha Denona palette, so take it that as you will. This of course has some excitement to it, because it does have the multi-chrome shade here. I'm not so sure will the camera be able to pick out the shifts of this one, but yeah, so it has something a bit more interesting to it, but it is essentially like most of the looks you will create with this one, they are going to be very warm toned leaning. Unfortunately, some of the darker shades, these aren't the most blendable ones. I have had quite a hard time. I have tried this black a couple of times in the corner, and even this aspiration shade, which is almost this like dark chocolate brown, and unfortunately not ABH, but with Natasha Denona, I have never been a fan of her more darker shade, because I have found that those are just for my makeup taste a bit hard to blend, but other than that I have generally liked her formula. So you aren't gonna get any like super like sparkly shades in this one, because this has her older formula. But if you really like your warm toned neutral looks, then I do think that this is still a good palette to get. And there is, like, as I said, because there's the multi-chrome in it, there is something a bit more interested in this one. But yeah, those were the sort of higher end sort of neutral palette recommendations, and now let's get lastly to the indie palettes. So for the indie ones, we have actually only two, because again I have grouped 2 out of 3. So Glamshop Totalny Nude, I think, was the name of this, and this is a line that they have sort of extended, and the matte palette is still available. So I always talk about these two palettes as a duo, because I use them together. And as I said, the matte palette, so this one is still available, I think, on their website. And why I always sort of hype this is that because this has quite unique neutral matte tones for my taste, because this has a bit more like this sort of yellow leaning and purple leaning mattes that like brown mattes that I don't have in like any other of my sort of neutral palettes. And also, like, this is one of the better like formulas that Glamshop has produced. This is very effortless to work with the dark, the light, the mid-tone shades. All of these are very beautiful, and it is like one of their better palettes. Then this is the shimmer palette, so this was the Blusk, and this unfortunately isn't available anymore. I don't understand why, because it's the perfect like complement palette to the matte palette. And these are still, even though this is beginning to be a bit older, I actually had this recently, this and the matte palette in my palette rotation. And this is like the ultimate collection of like neutral shimmers. So we have some darker shimmers, there are some sparklier shimmers. I had to repress one of the shades here because it fell out from the pan, but nevertheless, these two together, a perfect combo. Unfortunately, like I said, the shimmer palette you can't get, but if you are looking for a good sort of matte palette that the matte neutrals have a bit different kind of undertones to maybe some other neutral palettes, then this is something that I would still recommend. And then a palette that probably doesn't surprise you, so this is the Bunny Dollhouse palette. This was one of my, it wasn't my first indie palette from last year, but this I think was my second like ranked indie palette from last year. And this is like what I would call like a neutral palette with a twist, and the twist being very successful. So yes, there are a few like colorful-ish shades here, but these are still all essentially very muted and very, I would say they aren't like in your face, and you can still like most of the looks that you will do with this one, they will still be quite neutral. But the Blend Bunny formula in this is just so impeccable. All of these are so effortless to work with. The shimmers are so creamy, and even the these like darker shades, which would, for example, in my skin tone, think that they would be quite intimidating, but actually they are very easy to work with. This is a palette that I still like, even though it's beginning to be like in Blend Bunny's selection. This isn't, I know, something that they released last year, but this actually like already I think 2 years ago that they came out with this one, but I bought this when it became available at my shop. But even if this is like an older palette in Blend Bunny's line, this is like, if you have this or have been thinking about getting this, then absolutely, like, this is the sort of, if you are someone who wants neutrals but you want a bit of color, then this is like the best you can get, and the formula is so impeccable. And I have always also make a point saying that also the pastel row here, these are, you only need like 1 or 2 layers, and they are very opaque, and everything in this just works so beautifully together. So that's why I had to include it in this as one of my like favorite neutral palettes that I have in my collection. So those were sort of my picks for the neutral palettes that are my favorites in 2024. Comment down below what have been like your favorite neutrals palettes that you have been gravitating towards this year. If you like this video, then push the like button, subscribe to the channel, and if you want to get notifications from my future videos, then ring the bell button. You can also find me with the same nickname, Makeup Hedgehog, on Instagram. I hope I will see you again in another video soon. Bye bye!